Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and in today's video, we will be going over either the under or overvalued quarterbacks from the 2022 season, depending on what the title of this video is. This intro will be replayed in both of the videos, so if you know what I'm going to say already, then you can just skip right ahead if you don't want to see once again what my equalized value, the EV system, says the correct order for the value of the quarterbacks were in 2022 as far as how they helped teams win games. And you know how to skip ahead. So this list is determined with the help of my equalized value system compared to the average fantasy points per week over the first 17 weeks of the season. Dropped off week 18. I really don't like to count that. There's too many things going on with the week 18 that I don't like. So you can see the average fantasy points per week right here in the second to rightmost column. Then in the most rightmost column, that's the sentence, the average ranking of the actual guys. I think it's a little easier to look at this coloring scheme to see who jumps out as being out of order. Here is the master guide to that system. Here is the EV, also color-coded in the same way. Now this video is going to be a little bit different than the other positions because this was the first video that I actually did all the prep work for, and it's the last video I'm recording. And looking at my prep work, I can see the evolution of these videos. I went all in on the head-to-head matchup thing that was after the prep for these videos for the quarterback position, and I don't think it's necessary to go back. Actually, let me know if you like what's in this video more than the other videos. I think that it's a little bit easier to just follow the head-to-head thing. But as a guideline here for the quarterback position, you know, what was a quarterback 1 week when I'm saying a player has a quarterback 1 week? Well, it would have been on average over the last 2 seasons of data, 34.2 points plus or minus 4.4 points. They would all qualify as being a quarterback 1 week. And I do go into more detail about the actual EV system and how these points awarded for having a quarterback 1 or a quarterback 6, quarterback 3 even type week ends up working out, and this equalized value is just the average of all of those points that were awarded for each week, how that players did each and every single week. It's just ultimately the system just favors consistency over boom or bust, squashing down the impact that those boom or bust games have on players for the overall. When we're looking at the overall performance, which average fantasy points per week can be really slanted one way or the other due to just a couple of huge performances or really terrible performances, kind of just equalizes that out. That's why it's called the equalized value. Now, looking at the quarterback 6, we have about 23 points as the average. Quarterback 12 all the way down to about 18 points is the average. Then quarterback 18 is all the way down to about 14 points. Then we're getting to 10.5 points and 6 points at a quarterback 30. So you see, like, a really bad quarterback week really does hurt you quite a bit. And having a top 6 week is what you want, and that helps a lot. And the thing about quarterbacks is they're quite predictable, which I think really helps the value of the good quarterbacks, because you get this on a very consistent weekly basis. You get some quarterback 1 numbers from the best guys, quarterback top 6 numbers, 3, and the darker greens there. You can see there's a lot of that, and you don't see that at other positions. Some of them, it being very rare for a guy to have multiple QB1 or, you know, that position number 1 type games. So that is, I believe, about it. Let's see. You can see this up on the website, www.theffforge. If it's not up right away, it should be up within a day or two of both the over and undervalued quarterbacks positions videos coming out. And the players are all ranked here on the list according to my EV system. And yeah, I already plugged. There should have been a card that will bring you to the overvalued wide receivers if you would like to learn more about the equalized value system, how it works. Otherwise, just take my word for it. I like it. I think it accurately helps you to understand how much value guys actually did a little bit more accurately overall than the average fantasy points per week. So let's move on into this video's countdown. Real quick before we get into it, just about the undervalued quarterbacks here. I did have adjustments for players just like you would have seen or will see in the overvalued video for the quarterbacks. And those players that I adjusted due to injury or other reasons were Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Kenny Pickett. Tua, I just only fixed his week 4 due to injury, due to the time of game, I think. That was what the deciding factor was there. And Brock Purdy was non-injury adjustments because he did play in games where he wasn't the starter, and that really took down his average. So I will present to you, do I do that in this position? I may at times at least mention the pre or post average fantasy points per week of these players, but on screen, on the cheat sheet, you are seeing the post adjustment, and what I'm going to be verbally saying is the pre-adjustment average fantasy points per week number, so they aren't going to exactly match up if you look at them. Let's move on to the countdown though. Coming in 5th place for the most undervalued quarterbacks on the 2022 season, we're going to get a guy who the average fantasy points per week had him ranked 36th. However, the EV system said, no, he is just a little bit better than that. Had him ranked 33rd. And that guy is Kenny Pickett. Obviously, nobody is relying on Kenny Pickett on a week in and week out basis, unless you're in some sort of deep league, 2-quarterback league maybe. But outside of 2 really poor games and a game where he got injured in almost immediately in that game, Kenny was consistently mediocre. If he can make some minor improvements going forward into 2023, and he can finish off drives and actually get touchdowns on more drives, then he could quickly jump into, I would say, a top 20 type quarterback next season and become a solid streaming option. That's where I see him in. I expect those changes, really. I think he showed enough last season that we could get minorly excited about him as a streaming quarterback in good matchups. Of course, he's in a pretty tough division to find those good matchups, so that's not going to help. Let's move on to the 4th-ranked undervalued quarterback. Now, you would probably be shocked with this one. This guy was, via the average fantasy points per week, the 16th best quarterback. You would already be shocked by that. However, the EV system puts him into the top 12, ranked 12th via EV for Sam M. Effin Darnold here at my 4th most undervalued quarterback. He had 2 top 6 finishes and 1 top 12 finish, and those accounted for 60% of the games that he started. Remember, Sam Darnold, I believe, was adjusted, or maybe I didn't have to adjust him. Maybe he didn't start in any other games, but he had a very limited sample size where he performed quite well. He only had 1 top 18 performance, and he also had 1 top 24 performance. So I think that would be all 5 of his performances accounted for. The real bottom of the floor just wasn't there in his little world. If he is a starter in the year of 2023, no, you are not drafting him as a top 12 quarterback. But he might be a good late round backup guy to draft, just in case this small sample size is pretty realistic. Then he could be a high-end QB2, we'll say, is always possible. We'll see what happens in the draft, though, this season. No need to talk about that too much this early on in the offseason. On to the 3rd most undervalued quarterback from the 2022 season. This is a guy who, via the average fantasy points per week, was ranked all the way back at 21st. However, the equalized value has him ranked 15th. Quite a big difference there, which is partially why he's higher up on this chart. And his name is Jimmy Garoppolo. So we'll see. I didn't need to talk about this too much because I don't know that he's going to be a starter in the league next season. But he went 5-4 head-to-head versus Kirk Cousins, who was the EV number 16th, so just there, but was the average fantasy points per week ranked 13th player, so 8 spots ahead of him via average fantasy points per week, and he had a winning head-to-head record there. So that's good in terms of the argument here for Jimmy being undervalued. He had also a net plus 6 points going up against Kirk Cousins there, roughly. So, in either regard, he was, I think, a better value for you than somebody like Kirk Cousins was. So you can see they're back-to-back here on this chart. And, yeah, let's move on to the number 2 most undervalued quarterback of the 2022 season. And I have experience with this guy. He is a guy who averaged fantasy points per week, had him all the way at 15th. However, the equalized value system had him ranked 10th. And this is one where I think I was pretty much on top of this with my ranking of him. I kind of read him like a book early enough on. I believed enough in him as far as my weekly rankings go. And his name is Barack Purdy. Brock had a 3-1 head-to-head record versus Tua Tagovailoa, the EV number 11 player, one spot behind him there. But average fantasy points per week, 7 spots higher than ranked 8th. Reminder, Brock Purdy was 15th according to the average fantasy points per week. He also went to 3-1-1 in the head-to-head versus Geno Smith, the EV number 10 player there. So, no. EV 9, 1 spot ahead of Brock Purdy's 10th spot. And the average fantasy points per week, is that going to be 10? Did I get that right? Yes. 10th player down the line there. So a guy who's even a little bit better than him on the EV. He had a 3-1-1 record against. It is a small sample size for Brock Purdy. We will see how he does in the playoffs. See how early I did this. So unfortunately, Brock Purdy got injured. Hopefully, we'll just have to monitor that in the offseason. But he was super consistent in the regular season. He was the perfect backup to have on your team. When Kyler Murray went down, it was looking like my season was completely gone. And although I did actually miss Kyler Murray even, Brock came in and he at least gave me a chance for the other players on my team to lift me up and put me into a championship. It didn't work out like that, but Brock didn't hurt me at all. He was a welcomed surprise to have on my team down the stretch in the playoffs. He was good enough. We do have 3 honorable mentions. These are guys who were 2 or more lower in the EV compared to the average fantasy points per week. So those are going to be Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, and Kyler Murray, all undervalued quarterbacks. I would say I definitely would have undervalued Aaron Rodgers. Deshaun Watson, I did undervalue him for a week or two after he kind of started after a poor start to his fantasy season. And then Kyler Murray, I had on my team, and is another case of like you always wanted more or you were super nervous about him, but he came through excellently almost all the time. So my team did sorely miss him, even though Brock Purdy was great to have. And that brings us to the number 1 most undervalued quarterback for the 2022 season. A guy that I'm probably guilty of underrating myself. He was the average fantasy points per week ranked number 13 player. However, the equalized value had him all the way up as my number 7 player for the 2022 season. And that player is Dak Prescott. Dak went 5-4 head-to-head versus Daniel Jones, a guy who had the average fantasy points per week 11th, so 2 spots higher than him. EV number 13, however, so there's some proof of purchase there. He had top 12 finishes in 60% of his games, top 18 finishes in 30% of his games, and a top 21 finishes in 10% of his games. His first game back from injury, so it was just 1 game there for 10%. His first game back from injury, where he really dropped the ball. Then he was able to hold it up in 3 of these games and do pretty darn solid for you otherwise. Dak Prescott, number 1 most undervalued quarterback of the 2022 season. I can get behind that. So thank you very much for watching these videos. For my filming side, I'm wrapped up with the series now. So now you know whenever this is released, how jacked up of an order they're actually being released on YouTube in. Yeah, I'm just excited about draft season here. I'm ready to be over this. I've been working on these for a while now, and a lot of technical difficulties have really made it fun and delayed getting these out to you. So I apologize about that delay for this series. Things happen in life. So thank you very much. I love you all. I appreciate you. Take care. Enjoy the off season. I'll keep pumping out stuff. Peace out.